And the second, when you keep kind of referring to, words like, my part is dry and the rest of it is juicy, and words like, there's a market out there. I think as a Kashmiri, it really does remind us of the kind of sensationalism that has been going on the Kashmir dispute for a very long time, not just now, but also the fact that how neoliberalism has sort of engulfed the whole media apparatus in its clutches to kind of like produce discourses that are suited just for the market. And thirdly, it was incredibly I think ironic for me that you had a panel on Kashmir, but you simply did not talk about Kashmir at all. The whole time we heard about the Pakistani policy or the Indian policy, etc. And I feel, despite your dislike for the presentation, maybe then the PowerPoint presentation, maybe the title should have been Pakistan and India's policy in Kashmir rather than Kashmir itself. But my question is quickly, do you think that this is for the panel in general, do you think that the section on Kashmir really kind of represented the way Kashmir dispute is played out in international relations, which becomes a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan rather than Kashmir's indigenous struggle of freedom and self-determination, which really predates both modern post-colonial nations of Pakistan and India, which practically did not exist 70 years ago.
Thank you. Talat, would you like to address it?
If I could keep track of these sort of bullets that were fired in my direction. I think the point is well taken. The fact that yours is the first real question on Kashmir itself indicates what I meant, that there's a market out there which is not focused on Kashmir. We didn't select the questions coming our way, but 9/10 of the questions that have come our way were not related to Kashmir. The fact that I chose to speak on Kashmir itself means that I try to be ahead of the market, or try to sort of plug that gap that is in the market with reference to discourse on Kashmir. The fact that we did not talk about Kashmir as a standalone issue is a more realistic assessment of the situation. If issues between India and Pakistan are not sorted out, Kashmiri's issues won't be sorted out. You could reasonably argue that I should have taken a more sort of humanitarian take on Kashmir, just to put people at the center of the debate on Kashmir. That's a fair point. But I do believe that much of what's happening inside Kashmir relates to India and Pakistan policy, and unless that is sorted out, your Kashmir issue won't be sorted out. And that's what my take is. I'm not too sure how many people do want to fight a war or do not want to fight a war. I haven't spoken to like 1.6 million people of the subcontinent, so I have no empirical evidence to either endorse or reject your statement. I do know about war jingoism. I do keep a track on public opinion. I do look at public opinion polls, and frankly, those put together do not help me repose faith in people's ability to be peaceful. I think there's a lot of jingoism on both sides. States may be harnessing that jingoism, and media may be extrapolating it and exaggerating it and spreading it. But to suggest that people are all sort of lovey-dovey and the states want to fight, is open to empirical evidence and inquiry.
There is no empirical evidence that people want war either, so to conflict people.
That's why I said I can neither reject or not endorse your statement.
I think that neutrality is literally the problem that we have with media right now, this kind of objective.
I was just accused of being biased, and now you want to accuse me also of being neutral. Take your pick.
One question.
So we absolutely agree and respect the sentiments of the Kashmiris, but this event was particularly about censorship in India, Pakistan, and that being imposed in Kashmir, and Talat spent a good 25 to 30 minutes explaining that. So can you please
I think starting from what even Cyril had introduced his talk with Kashmir and many
focusing a lot on
so that's fine, but I think we could do more on that. I think my name is Aftab Siddiqui. I work in the city and a part-time columnist basically with Pakistani media. Two things I wanted to ask. One was I just wanted to guess with Farzana's your presentation. You mentioned one murder case, which is a very famous murder case, Sabeen Mahmood, and you mentioned it in line with the Baloch separatist movement. Probably, I think maybe I heard it wrong. probably it's something which was more sort of attack was from the Taliban kind of motivated movement, and Saad Aziz and a couple of other people are now under kind of prosecution basically. So it was not a Baloch related incident. Yeah, sentenced to death also. That Saad. That was. Secondly, so if you want to clarify that, please take it.
Well, look,
And this,
I'll just step in before we.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
not privy to any confidential information. I was trying simply to suggest that an open discussion on Balochistan and the disappearances associated with the insurgency are generally frowned upon, and attempts have been made to control dissent. And the fact is that Sabine Mahmood was warned against holding a discussion on her premises on Balochistan. I did not say that she was killed or murdered by either security agents or agents acting on behalf of the state. I simply said that, and that I think is in the public domain. She was issued with these warnings, and she was killed shortly after that meeting was held. So in the public mind, of course, it generates the impression that there was a correlation. Though if you have information, as I said, I am not privy to that.
Neither I am. It's something reported by Herald, and a lot of I think public domain information is available. I just wanted to have that clarification. The question to the panel is like, as we move towards social media, does it help us basically put the truth a little bit more unvarnished with the audiences and engage them through social media, and do not have the ownership coming into play and say, this is the policy, this is how I want you to run your show, this would be the format, and so intermediation is less and less there. So does it help us basically get the facts across and engage with the audiences through social media? Would it help, or how censorship would even impact that kind of medium also?
Look, it's a very important question that you ask, and honestly, it's a very sophisticated question as well. Generally, those of us who have worked in institutions use the institutional platform at various levels to access information, to process information, to take cues and guidelines, which is the editorial context in which you're operating. On social media, and if you want to mainstream social media, you really are on your own, which essentially means that you can't really use the argument, as I made in my presentation start, that you choose the story, you don't choose the headline. Because reporters would always say that, frankly, that wasn't my story, that wasn't my intro, somebody else edited it. Or it's the owner's fault, or it's somebody else's fault. You don't have that luxury at all on social media if you want to use social media as an instrument of mainstream. The other is, as I mentioned, the feedback is swift and at times lethal. You can't turn away from the feedback, and I'm not talking about trolling, I'm talking about genuine feedback. And the kind of feedback that we get, we have not gotten when we used to be in the mainstream media. And it's a very intelligent feedback as well. So don't think that people out there, you could really fool them. You don't fool them. You choose not to listen to them is another matter, but people have their very strong opinions. I would say that it puts a very heavy burden on those who are trying to use the social media for more mainstream purposes. Looks impactful, but it puts a heavy responsibility onto you. So that's my experience so far, yeah.
Thank you.
The other problem too for people watching it is, of course, there's no guidelines, so there's nobody monitoring it, so people could say anything and you've got no idea whether things are really true or false. So.
First of all, correctly said, we might not have the freest media, but we for sure have the most daring journalists. And I bite my tongue when I say this. The most geek, stubborn journalists in the best way possible, because they just don't give up despite all the threats they face. With that being said, prior to Ahmed Mir's incident 2014 to now, there was a Guardian article where Talat was referred a lot, but so was Gibran Saab, where he said the censorship in the media is more sophisticated now. So I guess my question is, 2014 to now, would you say censorship is better. It's handled better. It's dealt with better, firstly. Secondly, I want to ask about, Cyril correctly said that the media house, particularly broadcasting media, grew so much so fast where it reached a point where people were like, okay, we really, really need to tame this. But we see social media is getting to the same level. And it's a lot harder to control social media for obvious reasons than broadcasting media, because broadcasting media, you pick up the phone and you're like, bunker. Social media, you can't do that. So the people that are now censoring broadcasting media, how will they do this with social media? And to what extent will they be able to censor it or control it?
Can we have another question before we resort to answers?
Thank you, this is Shamil Barol. I'm a student at MSc and I'm also a journalist. I'm wondering what you have to say about the role of media networks and journalists in this censorship. Are they complicit in it? Let's start it in this way. There has been military operations in Baltistan, but a call in big media networks would have said, yeah, leave Baltistan, it's none of our issue. And coming to FATA again, like, it's none of our issue, whatever is happening in FATA, like for former FATA. Then coming to Karachi, like, oh, military operations in Karachi, what's happening with the MQM? Yeah, it's okay. This is a good operation. Like pushing it back and supporting it. Now this censorship is engulfed most top journalists. Now they are saying about it. So what do you say about it? Like, are they complicit media networks, owners, and journalists?
Well, I mean, first going into the ladies' question, although you can ask your dad about the censorship regime in Pakistan. But about social media, I think quite honestly, on a more serious note, I think what you've seen with the electronic media and the way these tools were developed over a period of time, it happened after it erupted and became so prominent. And I think there's definitely eyes on social media and there's thinking going into how do we rein this in. It's obviously a more difficult way to do it. But I would not assume that this wave of free commentary on the internet it certainly has not gone unwatched, unmissed. If I tweet something, I'll get a call quite quickly enough, as I'm sure a number of other people do. Some people respond, some don't, some pick up, some don't. So social media, I think I would say it's a pretty safe bet that there's a great deal of thinking going into how to sort of rein this in down the road. As far as sort of journalists, like I said, journalists are in competition with one another fundamentally. So in an environment where you have media bosses trying to encourage their employees to take on rival groups, etc., you'll see all sorts of strange things happening. And I mean, I'm loath to blame journalists because, first of all, I'm an employee, or was until recently, of a news organization. But so it is what it is. There are obviously bad eggs in every industry, and I think you probably can see them on TV or online, etc. And I think I just finish on that what Talat said earlier, that the viewers are not they're not stupid. In fact, the one thing I realized writing my column for many years at Dawn, etc., is that we have quite a sophisticated reader or viewer in Pakistan who is able to quite quickly discern between what is obvious propaganda or biased or sort of naked biases versus just somebody trying to genuinely impart information.
We're going to take the last two questions after Talat comments.
I would not know how they would censor it, frankly, because I'm not on the sort of censoring side of life. But this certainly is on the radar. They're studying it. There's a reason why Twitter has received more intimations from the government of Pakistan in terms of taking down Twitter, shutting down Twitter. Yeah, but I do not know whether they will be able to censor it or not. I'm talking about the social media. They take down Facebook pages, but then it involves a fairly elaborate procedures. Twitter has its own policy, so they're making attempts, but frankly, they don't have a handle on how to censor social media yet. And because of the expensive transnational nature of this technology, I think it's going to be very hard for them to bring it under heel. It's not geography sensitive. You know, you could be located anywhere and still be as effective, in fact more effective if you look at it elsewhere. So I think that's an open-ended thing for them. In terms of the sophistication of the operations, look, governments have been studying censoring social media for a long time. You've seen how Saudis have been trying to do it, the Turks have been trying to do it, the Chinese have been trying to do it. Trump administration has its own way of sort of flooding the market with fake news, saying that it's countering fake news, and there are ways to do it. I think India has done a remarkable job of creating a public mindset and opinion, and Moodyites are really very good at it. The way they sold the attack on Kashmir state to the public at large, if you were to study it at a deeper level, it's an amazing marketing strategy using the social media. The way Moody's image has been built over the past many years through the help of the social media is truly remarkable. I mean, here was a guy who wasn't getting a visa to go to the US because of the crimes that he committed against the Muslims, and yet over the last many years, through the social media and the strength of the Indian economy as well, you have to put that in, there he is sort of being cheered by the crowd in that big stand walking next to Trump. So I think governments and states have created a way to use the social media to create images, but have they really created a methodology to censor the counter to them? I don't think they have yet reached that point, and that's where probably salvation for people like us lies.
Sorry, we just have time for one last question. Can we have your question, please?
It fits so nicely with...
Just a quick question,
yeah,
please.
it fits so nicely with what you were just saying. So I wanted to get some advice, because my question was going to be, what's your thoughts on digital propaganda? Is it just as dangerous and as insidious as censorship? And I'll just quickly frame the question. Hi, Christina, by the way. So I'm a British Kashmiri who happens to work in digital marketing, and we always talk about Cambridge Analytica being like, the challenge of fake news here. So I want to get some advice on what advice do you give Kashmiris who have no media and internet to get their voice out and are consequently too scared of speaking out? No journalists going into the valley because international journalists aren't allowed in without permission. The Indian public who are being fed, to your point, a very sophisticated propaganda, fake news machine. And the diaspora who have to sadly do a lot of the journalism and human rights campaigning, who have to deal with amazingly sophisticated trolling and propaganda machines. So I kind of wanted to get some advice. Because I think the censorship has been in Kashmir is actually unbelievable, because when you talk about the things that happen there on a daily basis, and when you talk about it to like normal people, I feel like people are like, why didn't they hear about this? And it's something that obviously us Kashmiris sitting in here are feeling very passionate about, but it's advice that I think would be really well received.
Well, it's very frustrating for us not being able to get in reports, so we're very reliant on hearing from people like you who have sources inside. So I think if you have information and you have people there that can speak to us, then that's incredibly useful. And you do have, we're talking about different platforms, you do have ability now. You don't need the mainstream media, if you want to call it that, to put out information. I mean, we all look at all different forms of social media every day to kind of look at what's going on in a place and how to cover it.
I think it's more the sophistication of the digital trolling and the mobilization of the BJP, because it's so sophisticated. When I work, I'm super senior in digital marketing. We talk about Cambridge Analytica and how that changes, voting and all the rest of it. In India, it's like what's happening in China. It's so sophisticated, people don't even realize that. Actually, also one of the things we don't talk about is how, these populations are very mobile. Things that get sent through WhatsApp spread with amazing pace, and it's a real challenge if you're a minority. Forget being Kashmiri. If you're a minority in these places and you've got this amazing mobilization machine, it's like, how do you get that message out? Because we can, of course, do social campaigning, but there's censorship and then there's digital propaganda, which I think is a really big
You're
big
making
challenge.
a really interesting point, because I mean we have been focusing a lot on this censorship, but of course there is the other side, and ISPR of course is also very active in putting out its messages in Pakistan, and all regimes now, authoritarian regimes are using digital marketing. There's been a lot recently about the way that the Russians are using different groups in Africa to put out information, and it's very sophisticated and difficult to counter because it often looks very official. I remember speaking, before I ever heard about Cambridge Analytica, talking to, we used to kind of call it Black Ops, I guess, and talking to organisation here which was being hired, similar to what Cambridge Analytica was then later doing, but being hired by different governments like the Nigerian government in elections. And they were kind of setting up fake radio stations in places like Bristol which would then put out some fake story, which would then be picked up by real media and then circulated, and nobody would ever kind of look at the original source and realise that the whole thing had just been faked. So it is very sophisticated, and I think we still actually don't know very much at the moment about how all of this is done and what to do about it.
Quickly, if I could just sort of add to what's been said here. It's not an advice, it's just an observation. Journalistically, frankly, when you're confronted with the sophisticated, deal with it with the raw. That's what we say. When you're dealing with an over-sophisticated or very sophisticated situation, you put a counter in a raw form, especially if you're not in a position to really match the volume or the scale of a sophistication